Hey everyone, Baham here. So today I'll show you how you can craft a shield and a weapon for the Exsanguinate Minor Trickster. So the first thing we'll do is just go to emulator and then create a weapon, a shield. So we want a intelligence base because in order to get caster mods you need intelligence base. And then you could start with any, to be honest, but the one I prefer using is Titanium Spirit Shield just because it has more energy shield. But if you had another one, it would be fine too. And for the item level, I'll make it 84. That way everyone has access to this. All right. So now this is a simple base. It has nothing specific. So what we're going to do is we can go a couple of ways about it. First, you could use a fossil, etheric fossil. Okay, so it gives you a bunch of caster mods, more caster mods and less attack mods. So you can do that. So the reason why I like to use etheric is that it gives a bunch of caster mods, and the caster mods for a shield or spell damage, critical strike chance with spells, and +1 to any of the skill gems. You can spam those and hope for the best. And here you can see this is a good shield. This is what I would start with. You have increased spell damage, you have critical strike chance for spells, and then you can craft life on it. And this will be a good starter shield. It has some life regen too. It's nothing crazy, but to start, it's a pretty good one. Just remember that on the craft mods, you cannot craft any damage. Like no spell damage, no critical strike chance for spells or critical strike chance multiplier. The only one I think you can actually craft is a Veil mod, which is chance to deal double damage. But yeah, so make sure you try to get those mods and then you craft the others. Okay, so this is using caster. You could also use some essences. By the way, if you want, you can use the fossil or you could use just reforge caster and then did a couple of times until you get something good. Here we have crit chance for spells and cold. Again, this is something I would keep. The other two suffixes are pretty bad, but it's still pretty good for a starter item. And then you can craft life on it or uh, increase energy shield, one or the other. So if we look at the crafted mod, yeah, that could be it. Or life, as I said. And yeah, then your shield is done. Okay? So this is a way you can do it. Or you could use Essences of Scorn. By the way, on Craft of Exile, it uses the highest tier, so deafening, but you could simply spam screaming and shrieking. Especially early on, the difference doesn't really matter. Like it will give you some more DPS, but you will have way more rolls with if you use screaming and shriekings. So as you can see here, now what does it do? It guarantees critical strike chance for spells. So we have that mod guaranteed, and then yeah, here we have a spell damage. If it was higher, it could have been good enough. Here we've found a life, but remember that you can craft some life on it, but you cannot craft caster modifier. So you cannot craft spell damage or cold damage on that on the shields. Okay, so you can see again we got a spell damage. Again, super high energy shield at the highest tier, so it's pretty cool, but this is not what we're looking for. So you get the idea, right? So this is for the super basic shield, like the base, nothing specific about it, no fracture mod. So okay, this is where we come across a +1 to level of all. So that one sadly isn't physical. If it was physical, it would have been super good for a starter. It's fire. When this happens, make sure you take it aside and try to sell it for profit, because if someone's doing crit chance fire spell build, he will probably want to buy something similar to this. Okay, so do not reroll over it. Just set it aside, set it to a whatever price it is, and buy another base or one you picked off and start over from another base. All right. All right. Next, we have the +1 to all physical spell skill gem fractured. So you probably won't find it yourself. Maybe if you're super lucky, but if you find it on a trade website for cheap, it's a good way to start crafting your shield. Just remember that it may not be a titanium spirit shield. As long as it has this modifier, it will be fine. This is the best mod you can get. So yeah, maybe you get less inner shield. It doesn't really matter. This is what we're looking for. All right. So we'll just regall it in order to be able to craft anything on it. So we could use again caster and just spam it. And then here we have a crit chance. So and then spam it and hope for something good. The other thing you could do instead of caster is just Scald and try to get increased cold damage. Here we have increased cold damage, but the tier is super low. Okay, so that's another way you can go about it. Again, whenever you use Harvest, you can always use fossil crafting too. It works just the same. Here we have spell damage, but the other mods aren't too good. But you get the idea, right? It's pretty much similar to what we had. Again, you can use the essences. So the Essence of Scorn, which is cool because you have one guaranteed mod because of Fracture, then another guaranteed mod because of this, and then you can just spam it over and over until you get something good. Here, this is something I would totally keep. It has some spell damage, not the greatest. It has energy shield, so that's cool, and some resistance plus the guaranteed critical strike chance for spells. So there's a couple of ways, as I showed you, that you can go about it, and then just spam it over and over until you get something that's good for you. Here is another good example. We got the cold damage and again the tier is pretty low, and the critical strike chance for spells, and you could craft life and be done with for a while, not having to upgrade it. All right, next we have again I chose a titanium spirit shield, but it doesn't matter. Like a fractured cold modifier, it could be tier 1, but to be honest, that will be probably cost a lot. So I'll choose tier 2 just to make it available for more people, and then fracture it. Okay, so here we have a 89 increased cold damage. It could be spell damage too. It works the same. So what we could do with this is actually craft a reforge with physical until we get the +1 to physical spell, but the weighting is super low, so it will take some time. But if you do this, especially if you have the tier 1, it will probably be the best way to craft a good shield. And once you actually hit your +1 to physical, you would maybe we'll just add it for the sake of saving sometimes. Here, okay. I'll just remove. Regal it. Okay, and then okay. So maybe let's say we come up with it by spamming it with a harvest, as I stated, or again you can use fossils and craft more physical. One or the other works, and then you get once you get it, what you can do is just if you have the currency for it. If not, just keep it as is, craft something on it, and be done for. But if you want, you could craft prefixes cannot be changed. That for prefixes cannot be changed. And then what I would do is go to RT crafting. Once you get this, you go to RT crafting station, and then you choose critical or caster. It doesn't matter, as the only mod that you can actually get is increased critical strike chance with spells, and it has both tags. So you can see caster, and yeah, we're trying to get something a high tier of which here would be a like pretty good one. So this is how you do it, and as I said, you can use critical. It works too. Both work. Don't worry about it. Yeah. So yeah, sometimes you will come up with something like crazy like this because you increase your fire resistance and your chaos. But some others you will just have to like here we got a pretty shitty tier, and that will be your shield. Then you can craft something else out of it. So yeah, this is how I would go. Remember that using this prefixes cannot be changed. If you're using fossils or essences, it will not respect the meta mod. So be careful, but the RD crafting station is fine, so harvest crafting is fine. It will respect the meta mod. So if you mouse over, cannot be used on an item that has a meta mod, and for essences in the game, you could use it, but it will not respect the meta mod, so we will reroll all your items. So just be careful with this. All right, now for the weapon. So you can see on the top right, I will have a video link to how to craft a +1 with some spell damage under cheap. Unfortunately, using this method cannot guarantee the +1 fizz, but it will have a lot of chance of getting a +1 to anything. So if you get +1 to cold or fire, you can actually sell it back to someone else until you get your +1 to physical. So that's make sure you check that video. That's a good way to start with a good weapon. Now, with that being said, if we craft it on an Opal Scepter, and the reason why I went for Opal Scepter is that it has 40% increased elemental damage, and also the required stats aren't too big. So yeah, what we want to do is use an Essence of Woe. Again, you could use Essence Screaming or Shrieking. Doesn't have to be Deafening, but on the Craft of Exile, it always uses the highest tier, so Deafening. Unless you check that out, as I said, you can like do this, but for the sake of this video, we'll just use the highest tier. And then you use essences until you get something good. So here we found a critical strike chance for spells. So for a start, it could be good. If only we had the plus flat cold damage instead of fire, would have been really awesome. But this is good. This could be like your starting weapon, and then later down the road you upgrade to something better. But as a starter, this is pretty good. And then the next step would be, now that we have open suffixes, we could craft something on the suffixes. So we could craft mine throwing speed. Yeah. And then that's a good starting weapon. This we're not using it, but still. So you can see it's pretty easy. If not, you can, let's say we use tier 3 or whatever, you can roll it until we get any good modifier. Of course, if we get a +1 to either to any spell skill gem, we want to keep it. If we hit the physical, of course, it's super good for us. If not, just set it aside and start from another base and try to sell it for profit. So you can see sometimes you get this is crit chance, so this is for hitting with a weapon. Don't misunderstand this. And then yeah, you can just spam this over and over until you get something good. Here we found a double crit chance multiplier plus crit chance per spell. So this would be a super good starting weapon. And this is using Screaming Essences. So not even the highest tier. Of course, it's not the best, but it's a good weapon to start with. Next, we have +1 to all physical spell skill gems fractured. So here's a wand. You can use a scepter or a wand. It's fine. Just remember that wands in general requires more intelligence. So make sure you can actually fit this into your build. But if you're not using too many tattoos, you should be fine. So once we get this, we want to make it rare using a regal, of course. And then what we can do is again use the same essence we used earlier, so Essence of Woe. And now, since we are already invested into buying the +1 fractured, it could be a +1 to all skill gems, but if it had +1 to all skill gems, I would go another way about it. I will talk about this in a later video. But yeah, this could be cheap early on, and then you want to use for this, I would use the highest tier because you actually invested somewhat into the base, right? And then you spam it until you get something that's good for you. So here we have critical strike chance for spells. So this is a mod we're looking for, but it's too low, and the other modifiers aren't too cool, so we'll just reroll over it. If we can, we want to have an open suffix in order to craft mine throwing speed. But if we get like something super good, it's fine if we don't get it. So here, crit chance, no. Remember, this is for the attack, so for the weapon itself if you're using it. So it will not influence your DPS, okay? Just double check it. Here we have crit multi, but sadly the fire is bad and there's nothing else, so we'll just rule over it. So this is a kind of okay mod, so it would be like a good prefix to have, and then but sadly our suffixes kind of suck. You could craft prefixes can be changed and reforged with the RT crafting station critical or caster mod, but I think this is like too low. I would just reroll with essences till you get something better. Here we have some more spell damage, which is super low, but and a critical strike chance for spells and an open suffix. So what I would do again is just craft crafting and then craft mind throwing speed until we get 15. Yeah. And that's your build, that's your weapon for the very well. Then you can bless orbit if you want to make sure you have 37 spell damage. And that's it. So this is a weapon you can use for a while. It will carry you through red maps, guardians and stuff like that without any problem. Next we have a increased cold or spell damage fractured, so one or the other. Again, it doesn't matter. And want to reroll it, of course, to make it rare. And again, we can use essences or art crafting station, but we'll, for the sake of this video, we'll use essence of scorn, and then you can use whatever tier you want. And then until you get another modifier. So it could be a +1, of course, it would be the best, as again, but like critical strike chance multiplier, or maybe flat cold damage as a prefix. Here we have some increased spell damage, so this could be a good starting weapon. And then again, you just craft mind throwing speed onto it. I'll make it. Yeah, okay. And then yeah, you have your weapon for a while. It will carry you like no problem. Of course, getting +1 is always better, but this is a pretty good one. But if you want, you can keep searching for a better one. It's fine too. If you come up with critical strike chance multiplier, it would be the best outcome aside of a +1. So here we have a good example, but for this, we do not have any suffixes open, so we won't be able to craft a mind throwing speed. So just keep that in mind, but this is a good weapon early on. So yeah, I gave a bunch of different examples. The reason is that if, let's say, everyone's doing a +1 fractured physical and the price jumps up to crazy stuff, you can use increased cold or spell damage fractured and it will work. So just keep that in mind. Also, wands can actually roll cast speed, which does nothing for us. So just keep that in mind. So in general, you want to use scepters, but if it's super cheap, you could always use a wand instead of a scepter. So yeah, there's a bunch of examples that could help you out. Hopes this can give you some tips on how to craft. And as always, take care, guys.